So I haven't told anyone this really, at least like publicly, but I came this close to buying just about 35 acres of land with no past experience when it comes to like farming. And the whole idea is not just, for example, to buy some farmland to make a profit and to plant this and that. No, it's more like about a homesteading idea where I'm actually living on the land, living off the land, and so on. I'll go more into detail later, but that whole deal actually fell through, and I should have gone after at least like half the lot, but I didn't because I wanted like the whole thing, and we couldn't actually meet up on a price, and then the whole thing just fell through. And it's mostly just because I got way too greedy. I should have gone for half, but that's another topic for another day. Now, let's dive right into this video. And I think that as you guys watch this video, it may change your mind about, for example, living in the city. As you guys know, I used to live in New York. Like, that's like the most city lifestyle you could probably ever have. And now I live here in Dominican Republic in a very small town. And I'm even thinking about like, hey, I just want some land to do certain things. I'll go more into detail here, but yeah, it may change your perspective on things, and you may even want to do what I'm trying to do potentially, okay? Now, let's get right into this video, and do me a favor and actually smash the like button. The very first thing, guys, is this, okay? I love the idea of homesteading, of having a family living on a farm, doing honest work every single day, which is like hard work, but it's also honest, great work. More detail on that later. And I also love the idea of actually living off the land and being like independent in a way. Now, I'm not talking about like, hey, I want to live a life where I'm off grid, where I don't have any portable water, I don't have any electricity and all that stuff, right? Although I can produce my own via like solar panels and via like water irrigation and all this other stuff. But for me, it's more about like, yeah, if it's available to me, if I can have electricity and just connect to it, I want it. If I can have, for example, water connected, I want it. But I also want systems in place so if these things fail, I'm actually able to just be independent and take care of things. And for the most part, nutrition wise, this to me is so fundamentally important. I realized, for example, in 2020, when that whole thing happened, that if we had gone like 3 days without being to shop for food, we would have basically starved because we did not have any food outside of the food that was basically available to actually buy, because we didn't grow any food, we didn't know how to grow any food, we didn't have anything, right, for the most part. And then as far as, for example, like electricity and all this stuff, I do think that for the most part things are probably going to be okay, but just in case things don't be okay, I would like to be independent in that sense. And also on the food like aspects, I realized that when farming went from like people just farm and they sell things to being, for example, a massive industry that's just for profit in a way, it went from like trying to do like great thing for like the meat quality and to deliver something great to the customer to just try to basically do productivity things. Okay, so if I can inject hormones into a chicken, and instead of it taking, for example, more weeks to actually grow up, it can take, for example, like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and I have a whole chicken, I'm gonna do that. If I can have a cow, or for example like pigs, and inject hormones into them and like just like grow them even faster, I'm gonna do that, right? So when I figured those things out, and when I figured, for example, what the consequences actually are on the body to like by eating those things, I was like, I'm not pretty happy with this. And when I even figured out the vegetables are filled with like pesticides and all this other thing, I was like, well, what do I eat? It almost makes you feel for a second, once you figure out all this stuff about our food, it almost makes you feel like every single time you're eating food that you're not growing yourself, or you don't know exactly where it's coming from and the process went through, it makes you almost feel like you're literally eating poison in a way, right? So it makes you want to grow your own food even further. And I used to think like it was like this big process where you need a ton of animals, but it's actually not true. More on that later, okay? But here's something I actually want to add here. I am fully aware, and you should too if you're actually considering actually doing this, this is not an investment in a way. An investment is something you put your money into that makes you an appropriate return without taking on a lot of risks. When you put your money, for example, in farmland and is producing something, right, and that's making you a return and so on, that's an investment. But when you're trying to homestead, where you're buying land to just live on the land and to basically live off of it, and you're not actually making money from it, then obviously it's not an investment. But I think that life is not just about, well, I just want to turn a dollar into two. That's not what life is about fully, because I think there are some massive benefits to actually doing this. For example, it provides housing, it provides food, and it could even eliminate or basically just make your utility bills a lot lower. So basically your cost of living almost becomes nil because you become more self-sufficient. And that gives you also a massive sense of security, because also per month, you don't need to make a lot of money or have a lot of money because all of your bills mostly are covered. So that's a massive benefit. It's not just about, for example, I want to turn my money into more money, but sometimes you could use your money to make it so you don't need that much money at all, or possibly no money at all. Okay, that's also a possibility. Now, I'm trying to get, for the most part, two things out of this land. The first thing is actually honest work. Honest work in a sense that having, for example, a homestead, although it looks cool on YouTube and when you watch videos, when you read books about it, and they have like the pretty animals, it's a lot of work. I've seen, for example, how my grandpa used to have animals and so on, and it was a lot of work. And I think that honest work is good. It's good for a man to be occupied in that way. And I think it also gives you exercise, because a lot of our jobs is just, for example, sitting at a chair, staring at a screen and so on. And also a big part of it is, people kind of say, well, why would I basically be working in a farm in a way, on a homestead, and feeding animals and taking care of animals and doing all this stuff, which takes up maybe a lot of time, when I could just basically buy the meat and basically pay for these things and not worry about it. And what I'm seeing is that that's my case now. And what I'm doing with my free time, for the most part, is spending that free time like on my phone and just basically staring at screens and entertainment. And I rather, for example, use my free time in a sense to work on something that betters, for example, my family in a way, than working, for example, just on looking at a screen for 6 to 8 hours every single day. And I think it's honest work for me, but it's also honest work for my kids, to teach them, for example, great values and morals, and to teach them how things actually happen, how they grow, patience and all that stuff. Because for the most part, I feel like we're raising like tablet kids. Kids are like, for the most part, just like standing there looking at a screen and not really doing anything. And I've seen, for example, I didn't really think about that well, and so started doing research on this stuff. I saw like a mom, she has her kid, and her kids have like a whole bunch of chores. The kids feed the chicken. They're like 4 and 8, I think it is. They feed the chickens. They grab the eggs, and you might say, well, that's child labor. No, but it's like being productive. Like, do you rather your kid be like feeding chickens and grabbing eggs and not doing like labor intensive work, because that's not labor intensive work at all? Would you rather, for example, they be on a tablet all day? I don't like that idea. I don't like that concept. I feel like it's such a waste of time, and it's such a honestly like a bad way to parent, where instead of you parenting and teaching values and taking responsibility for your kids, you basically just hand them a tablet and just take care. Okay, just watch that show. It's educational. They're learning something or whatever, just so you don't have to deal with your kid. Okay, that's the way I kind of view it. And then the second thing I actually want from the land is obviously food, right? I want the vegetables for the house. I want the meat for the house. And when I used to contemplate this, I used to contemplate, well, to do that, I need so much land, right? Because it's so crazy. Like, if you want to have, for example, a family of 4, a family of 5 or 6 or 8, whatever family you want, you probably need like a ton of acreage, right? And it's not true. I basically learned that one pig can basically feed a family for like 6 months. And I was like, well, if you have like 3 pigs, 4 pigs, like, I mean, you don't even need more pork. And if you have, for example, like a cow or like 2 cows, like for milk and so on, like, you're good to go. And I used to think like, well, to have a cow, you need a ton of acreage. But the truth is, there are miniature cows. And if you want milk, there are also goats if you don't want to have a full cow, right? So, and if you want meat and you don't want to have a big cow, there's also, for example, sheep. And there's like so many ways to do this that I was just impressed. I was just blown away. What I thought in my head that was basically, you need all this stuff. It was like, no, you actually just need like 5 to 10 acres, and to just have it very well distributed, and you'll be just fine. And if you just have a ton of land, most of the time, most of the land just basically goes unused, and it makes your wallet thin, and it makes your time thin. And those are 2 things that I obviously don't want to do either way, okay? So this type of lifestyle impresses me a lot, and it grabs me a lot. To some people, it's kind of like a turnoff, where they think like, why would I want to live that way when I can just buy everything? and just like spend my time just like on a phone. People don't say that, right? But that's what people do, right? Just spend their time on their phone or just like having a job or whatever. I don't like that mindset that well. So now here's my plan to actually acquire some land because the deal actually fell through, obviously. I noticed that I don't need as much land as I probably thought I did. So that gives me a massive benefit. Where I live right now, which is like a small town, for me to get, for example, like 5 to 10 acres in this area, it would cost me a good chunk of money. But the benefit is that it would be like in the same area, right? It's a small town, everything is around here. My family would be like 5, 10 minutes away. I wouldn't have to take a highway to get anywhere. I just basically right in town, just go see my family, whatever, which is a massive deal, by the way, because in Dominican Republic, we have a lot of road accidents, and if you can basically get away from the highway, that would be a big benefit. Another idea would be basically, well, I can build a house in the small town where I live right now and then have the farm somewhere else, or buy the farm somewhere else, like live over there. But for the most part, I'm more edging now towards like having something here, like in the town I live, and then having some land somewhere else, or buying some land if I can find some with a good amount of space to actually do everything I need right here, even though it might cost me a little bit more money. But it would be a massive convenience when you actually break everything down. But that's my plan for the most part. And the bad part is that I have to be very patient because it's not going to happen overnight, and it might take me a little longer. I think that if I would have bought, if I basically would have bought those 35 acres, it would have basically emptied me out, okay? Because it's a lot of money. So I'm buying those. By the way, land here is kind of expensive. You know, in the U.S., I could basically buy 35 acres like with no money, right? It's like ridiculous. But here, it's a lot of money for like just 35 acres, right? So because it's a small island, so the land in a way is gonna be more expensive relative. But yeah, raw land is a little bit more expensive here. But if I would have done that, it would have been a mistake. If I would have bought half, that would have been a lot better. But it's something to consider. But those are all the reasons why I want to buy land, and those reasons are still valid to me, and I'm still looking forward to buying some land. So if you plan on maybe, if these things are important to you, obviously, and you kind of like want to have a homestead, there are a ton of channels out there on YouTube on this topic. I'm more of a financial channel, and every now and then I kind of share my perspective on certain things. But yeah, it's a great idea. I like it a lot. Do a lot of research. Don't rush into anything. Start small and just build up over time. That would be my biggest advice to you and also to myself, because I can get very impulsive sometimes to just want to buy something big, but that's greed. And you don't want to be greedy because greedy can make you real broke real fast. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time. And as always, subscribe to the channel and also leave a like. Peace.